Okay, and as I was saying, Donnie Gupton is a very highly regarded recruiting industry consultant and marketing and lead generation specialist, and we are absolutely delighted to have him present this 4 steps to get more job orders presentation. And as I mentioned, for the folks that are joining now, Donnie will take questions at the end. So if you have questions for Donnie as he goes through the presentation, send those over through the Q&A box that's on your webinar control panel. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Donnie. Donnie, welcome. We're delighted to have you today.
Dan, thank you very much. Fired up to be here, humbled to be here. Excited. I've been working on this for the last couple of weeks, and I've tried to package as much value in the next 45 to 50 minutes as I possibly can. Like Dan said, we'll take that last 15 to 10 minutes and answer any questions that you have. But today we're going to talk about the 4 steps recruiting agencies are taking to get more job orders and qualified candidates without having to rely on LinkedIn Recruiter. So like Dan said, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to drop them and we will get those dialed in at the end. But just to kind of clarify real quick who this is for, this is really going to be targeted for independent recruiters. If you have a boutique staffing agency or an executive search firm or just a traditional staffing agency, and you're really open to modern ideas and concepts, you're really going to enjoy this webinar here. This really isn't ideal necessarily for, if you're a third party recruiter, or not a third party, excuse me, but a corporate recruiter. It won't be as hit home as much, but there'll definitely be some takeaways for you. What you'll get if you stay with me to the end is we're going to show you exactly how you can basically ditch LinkedIn Recruiter if you want. We're going to show you, how you can communicate with your prospects so you can have a loaded pipeline you can nurture without sounding like you're completely out of touch. And we're going to show you how recruiting agencies are building massive audiences across multiple platforms and becoming the biggest fish in their pond. But my biggest promise is you'll know exactly what you need to do to scale your agency rapidly, allowing you to get off the revenue roller coaster while working less hours and with better clients and without having to rely on that LinkedIn Recruiter. So, and then finally, like Dan said, if you stay to the end, we're going to do a nice Q&A. But let's dive right into this thing right now. So right now, I would imagine you're probably feeling like you're not sure how to continue your business development efforts while you're overflowing with your existing orders. But if you take your foot off the gas for too long, then pipeline will likely dry up. It's a great time to be in business right now. For most recruiting agencies, everybody's pretty busy, right? So looking at proactive ways, a lot of times, you're probably feeling like all your eggs might be in a few baskets. And right now it feels good because you're getting a lot of orders from those few eggs. But you kind of deep down, you might know that if your biggest revenue generating client goes away, then you might be scrambling for new clients, and you may not have a system in place right now that helps support that. You might be feeling like your time and expertise is just not valued by your clients and candidates. Maybe you just feel like you're another cog in the process and frustrated because you really just can't differentiate yourself from the next recruiting agency, and you ultimately just want to help people. And you might be feeling like the success or survival of your business is determined by how motivated your biller is, how many cold calls they make, how hard they work, how hungry are they, but you're really not sure how to take the keys back to scale your business. And you might feel like you're constantly chasing mediocre searches that, your team is ultimately going to struggle to fill because you don't have that, opportunity to get more exclusive or retained opportunities. And you might be feeling like you're on a revenue roller coaster and you're at the survival, or you're at the mercy of existing relationships. So basically your vacations, future survival success is all determined by if someone knows you happens to speak up on your behalf or not. The reality of it is I feel like this industry has been lied to for a long time. Okay. And it's not your fault, but this is what, the big lie is that you have to have certain tools. You have to win on the phone. You have to be on the phone all day. You have to hammer the phone. You got to do your 100 hours of that. Then you have to use LinkedIn Recruiter or you can't be a successful recruiter. And we're going to show you some ways to work around that. And that's what the good news is if you guys understand these 4 steps that we talked about, you'll know exactly what you should be doing to scale your recruiting business rapidly and make it recession proof. You know how to load a pipeline of prospects and properly nurture them. So when their need arises, you're the obvious choice. And you'll know how to differentiate yourself and become the relevant choice in your market, creating the more exclusive and retained opportunities and demand to pick and choose the companies you want to work with. And you'll have the knowledge necessary to drive all the business you need from the organizational level and never have to rely on motivating your billers to smile and dial 100 a day again. And you never have to rest on your existing relationships because you know exactly how to create online presence that builds relevant digital relationships at scale without wasting time, and most importantly, without wasting energy. And you're going to know how to capitalize on this unique time in the market so you can create consistent lead flow, income, impact, and ensure you're prepared to gain market share. But a little bit more about me and why should you listen to me anyway. So I've been in the staffing recruiting industry for the last 4 years, specifically focused on marketing, automation, and lead generation. I've spent years and a ton of money figuring this whole marketing stuff out. And I grew my family business 300% in the 3-year span, from under $1 million to over $6 million. And we built the marketing business to 6 figures within the first 4 months. And the Relevant Recruiter method and the Relevant Recruiter program is what I have to offer, is generated millions for recruiting firms across the globe. So what I'm about to share with you today is not theory. These are all proven tactics. Okay. Now, my first business, like I said, was with my family, and it was a completely different industry. We were in floor covering industry. And that's my sister and my dad there. And, long story short, we were in the same situation a couple of years ago with the recession. And we were actually came out of the 2008 recession, going in as under $1 million, coming out as over 6 million. And it was all through digital marketing tactics. And I learned a couple of things during that time. One, I didn't want to be in the construction and retail industry anymore. And 2, I really had a skill and a gift for online marketing, lead generation. But more importantly, I was just passionate about helping and coaching people. And I can't tell you how fired up I am to be able to lead you guys today in this training. Once I stepped out on my own and started my business in the recruiting space, I really noticed kind of 3 types of recruiters. There was the one that really completely ignored digital marketing. They worked 50 to 60 hours a week. They hammered the phones. They worked on every job in the town, but they weren't only making placements like once a quarter. They were busy, but they weren't busy making money. They were just busy. And I don't know how many of you guys can relate to that, but there's definitely opportunities to get away from that. Then there was the other one that kind of like dabbled with their digital presence, knew that, there's some opportunity, but they really prided themselves on repeat business and referrals, but they really didn't have a system in place to consistently get new clients. And then I noticed that there was, other people that were really all in on their digital presence. They took it seriously. They were way ahead of the curve. They were positioned as authority in their marketplace. They knew how to attract their clients to them. Their time was leveraged, and they knew how to build out. They had a marketing system in place, and ultimately that was putting them ahead of the game. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Is we're going to talk about the 4 steps you can do to get ahead of the game. And so the first step, the first kind of shift you want to make, is that business development doesn't need to be driven by the desk anymore. Okay. It's driven by the brand. Okay. And right now, the reality of it is your business is in danger of getting taken over by machines. And I'm not talking about, robots. I'm talking about actual automation, marketing systems, and machines that can do way more than what your billers and what your human can do. And so if you guys haven't adapted fully and gone all in on online, you're going to learn a lot today. And if, my personal belief, if I'm being brutally honest, if you don't adapt, it's just a matter of time before you go away, because there's so much more reach out there when you're leveraging the online game. So the desk model has been slowly dying for a while. Cold calling is ineffective 91% of the time, according to Zoom. Less than 2% of cold calls actually result in a meeting. Less than 1% of cold calls lead to a sale. In fact, 90% of C-level executives say they never reply to a cold call or cold email. Now, I'm not telling you to stop cold calling necessarily. If you've got something that works, if it's not broken, no need to fix it, so to speak. But please keep in mind that there's a better way. And actually, the things that I'm about to show you, if you were going to still continue to do outbound calls, will only improve the response rate. But I'd be curious, like, how many of you guys on here actually like to cold call? If you guys are actually cold calling, because I talk to hundreds and thousands of recruiters a year, and it's basically 1 out of 100 to 1,000 that actually enjoy that. But the desk model, really what it does, it's kind of a trap. It keeps you on that revenue roller coaster, right? Where it's like hustle, 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 get some more jobs to work on, and then I got to stop, and then I got to hustle to fill those roles, right? And especially right now, the big challenge is, because a lot of you guys are just overwhelmed with the business that's on your plate right now, well, then business development is completely come to a stop. And you may not feel that now, but you'll feel that months from now. And that's usually where you get in those gaps in your revenue. And so, really the solution here is development of an online presence driven by the recruiting practice itself will ultimately be key to survival here. Okay. If you want to get consistent revenue and really eliminate that roller coaster, then the development of this online presence is going to be absolutely key. Okay. And really what you want to do, the way you want to think about it is, the one who has more at bats gets more hits, pretty much, right? So let's just do some basic numbers and math. If you were, the common saying in the industry, smile and dial 100 a day, if you're doing 100 a day, that's 500 a week. And I don't even know very many people that are doing 500 a week anymore. But look at the numbers down here. This is just from like a Facebook ad screenshot. These are, versus 500 versus 8,500 people when it comes to your reach. Who do you think is going to get more hits over time, right? It's going to be the one that has that best brand presence. Okay. And so really there's a way that you want to build your personal brand. I'll kind of break it down this way. We call this a relevant recruiter personal brand pyramid. Okay. What I see on, for the most part, and I'm just, I'm a pretty brutally honest guy, so bear with me here. But if you're out there and you're just posting if you're posting jobs on LinkedIn, for example, I'd say, good that you're out there and at least you're posting jobs. But if that's all you are doing right now, your personal brand is very weak, and there's a lot of opportunity for you to improve it. Okay. But a lot of what I see is recruiters will just go, hey, new role, senior engineering manager for XYZ company. And that's the extent of their personal brand. And if you're doing that, like I said, congrats, at least you're out there, but it's time to take that to another level. So the next step really is where you kind of have more of an average personal brand. At this point, you're at least starting to talk, to your market. You're starting to talk about pains. You're talking to, giving them tips and tricks. You're building some awareness. You're starting to differentiate yourself. You're telling a little bit more of a story. That's when your personal brand becomes more average, and you probably see some of the effects of that. If you've gone that far and started creating content that way, you probably started to see some results. But there's a whole nother level out there, and that's when you're kind of getting into that powerful personal brand where you really are committed to becoming the authority in your industry. And if you want to really build a powerful personal brand, unless you just have loads of cash sitting around, my recommendation is to try to own a niche in a marketplace. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. But the reason you'd really want to own a niche is because it's easier to build a marketing system online to a specific audience than it is to a general audience. And if you're really in on building a powerful personal brand, you want to be able to communicate stories that are going to be relevant to both your clients and candidates. You're going to want to be able to, have emotional type of content that's going to, build a connection with your audience. But ultimately, you want to become the problem solver of your industry. And most recruiters are just so used to kind of putting a body in a seat, but there's usually a bigger problem going on within that organization that you can help out with. And that can put you into a completely different light. Now I'm not a commodity. Now I'm somebody that's known as like, oh, shoot, I got to work with XYZ because they know how to solve this problem. They don't just put a butt in the seat. Okay. So there's a huge opportunity if you guys, feel like you have that recruiting acumen, but you're not telling that story. Then I would really encourage you guys to really put yourself out there and go all in on your personal brand. Okay. And it's kind of like, Blockbuster back in 2004, Blockbuster was valued at $6 billion. Think about that, $6 billion with a B. And in 6 years, they went bankrupt. And all they had to do, they had all the data, right? They had everybody's information. They had everything they needed. All they needed to do was digitize their movies. And they would have still been, we would be talking about Blockbuster and chill. We wouldn't be talking about Netflix and chill. So don't be that company that stays so stuck in the old ways that the competition eventually swallows you up. Because if you get this right, you'll have consistent lead flow coming to your business so you can survive and even grow in this crazy economy. And you'll have a brand that generates you new business. And you'll no longer be viewed as a commodity, but an authority that people want to do business with. But if you don't get this right, you're going to continue to struggle and wonder where your next lead is going to come from. And you'll waste massive time and energy trying to motivate a team on an old school smile and dial approach that flat out won't work right now. And ultimately, you're going to eventually get swallowed up by the competition and get put out of business. Okay. And Rachel took this step, you can see with this whole, just by going all in on her personal brand, she was able to touch 10 times more people. Her brand changed, and she's really starting to be viewed as the authority in her marketplace. Okay. Now a lot of the things, and I've kind of already, kind of touched on this, but hey, Donnie, the game is won on the phone, right? I hear this all the time. We've touched on that. And no doubt you have to be good on the phone. And again, I'm not necessarily telling you to stop cold calling, but what I'm telling you is you can do more strategic things. But how you get to the phone, in my opinion, I don't do any outbound calls. I wouldn't do any outbound calls because for me, getting onto the phone with somebody that wants to be on the phone with me is way more a better use of my time. And it allows for a much better conversation. Okay. And that brings us into our next step is, in order to build a powerful personal brand, you need to learn how to build relationships at scale and drive traffic and an audience to your brand. So let me ask you a question. Assuming you were spending the same time, energy, and effort to build meaningful relationships with your perfect leads, would you rather be building relationships with 20 people at a time or one? I think the answer is pretty obvious, right? Of course, 20. With 20 meaningful relationships, you have a way higher chance of making consistent placements and finding the ideal client that is going to value what you do. Okay. Because when you have more choices, you're not afraid to fire clients or pass on opportunities that are not ideal. Or if a candidate bails out, you're not worried. And that puts you into a position of power. And that'll save you a ton of time and energy working on jobs that ultimately you're not going to fill. Okay. And so the first thing you really want to do is go from this, which is a one-to-one approach, okay, to this, which is a one-to-many approach. Okay. So if you guys aren't leveraging campaigns for where you're touching multiple prospects on a daily basis, then that's definitely something that you're going to want to incorporate. And especially if you're trying to keep up with the demand of your leads right now, or demand of the open orders you have right now, you have to be leveraging different tools to be able to expand your reach. So one of the first tools that I really recommend is actually LinkedIn Sales Navigator. I have a ton of people, and I can't make this decision for you, okay? But I have a ton of people that will combine LinkedIn Sales Navigator with some other outside tools and have no problem, eliminating LinkedIn Recruiter. Okay, Sales Navigator also allows for, they really tie in well with a lot of the automated tools that are out there. Now, I'm not talking about automated tools that LinkedIn's necessarily going to endorse, but if you're not automating, certain parts of your business, and if you haven't explored automating LinkedIn, there are great opportunities there. Now, I know a lot of you've experienced, lots of spammy messaging and things like that on LinkedIn. But there's a way to do that properly, and where you can generate consistent quality conversations. And the great thing about leveraging automation is that, it's working for you while you're doing some of the other revenue driving activities. Now, in addition to, leveraging Sales Navigator, we got to leverage Loxo as well. And, what I love about Loxo is the fact that, it's kind of an all-in-one marketing hub. And I look at it from a little bit different lens than some of you guys do that use it as an ATS and a CRM and things like that. But for me, just having a marketing mind is it really has a lot of tools packed in one here. And, the ability to do the SMS messages, the ability to do drip email campaigns, the ability to do single send email campaigns, all allows us to go from one-to-one to one-to-many and allows us to hit our audience at a larger scale. Okay. And the great thing about Loxo, as a lot of you guys know, I'm sure you guys are all Loxo members or have been considering Loxo, is that they've got some of the best data in the world. And, when you have that data and you have a way to deliver that data, now we're able to reach and build relationships at scale. And that is absolutely got to be a part of your plan. And it's amazing to me how many people I talk to that use tools like Loxo, but haven't even tapped into all that it has to offer and haven't even ran a drip campaign out of it. So if you're not doing that yet, if you're not fully leveraging Loxo, complete game changer. And I would tell you very confidently that with Loxo and Sales Navigator, that alone would allow you to wipe out LinkedIn Recruiter. Okay. Now, if you get this whole concept of one-to-one to one-to-many right, you'll be able to grow your audience and generate conversations while you're busy focusing on other roles. And your team will be able to focus on the bottom of the funnel, resulting in even more revenue. And you'll be able to generate enough demand so you can ultimately pick and choose your clients. And that's power right there. If you don't get this, you're going to continue to fall behind the competition. And you'll still be relying upon that manual hustle for the results of your business. Okay. So when Ben took this step, Ben owns Morgan Benjamin Staffing as well as Snelling Staffing out in Houston. And right away, once he started, going from one-to-one to one-to-many, I haven't had this many meaningful sales calls in such a short period of time, as long as I can remember. I'm a true believer. This one, 6-figure retainer from using this type of approach. Okay. A 6-figure retainer. It's a first strategic deal from this type of a thing. Okay. Jessica Shuttleworth and Katie Marriott worked with me last year, actually in the beginning of the whole pandemic. And this is actually from that. Okay. They were able to generate 150 responses in April while everybody else was panicked. They were out there running campaigns and growing their business. And it's why, because we had an approach. We had a way that taught them how to do it that wasn't out of touch. And ultimately they were able to pick up 8 new clients and 14 orders in 90 days between April and June. Quite impressive. Okay. Now, the next step of this whole thing is really finding out and learning how to create content that converts into inbound leads. Okay. What if over 1 million people in your market were seeing your stuff? What if you're able to get in touch and you were able to capture the eyeballs of 1 million people? Okay. Well, this is actually quite possible. When you know how to create content that converts, a lot of great things can happen. Now, if you look at this post, this is from Mark Wilson. He's currently in my mastermind right now. If you look all the way at the bottom there, I don't know how many of you guys can see it, but it's 5.7, we'll just call 5.8 million views from a basic post. Now, the results of what happens from these types of things is he's just inundated with qualified candidates, and sometimes unqualified candidates, let's be real, that are reaching out to him and, trying to get into his network now, trying to get into his world now, because he's out there creating content that really converts into making an impact. And when you're reaching people at 6 million, what happens is now almost everything he posts is getting several thousand views. He just had another post last week that about 80,000 people, and it resulted in about 9 qualified candidates reaching out to him. It's pretty amazing. Okay. And so really what the game here is when you're doing one-to-one to one-to-many, the first thing is having great outbound efforts, but ultimately you want to be able to switch from an outbound to an inbound, right? And that's the whole idea. Is you right now, you're just kind of hanging in this area. And when you're chasing clients, guess what? That's what the recruiting industry is all about. So that's what the recruiting industry has always been about. So if you're chasing people, you're really just kind of throwing yourself into the same box, because you're just kind of a part of the noise. And so really you want to get it to where the clients are chasing you. Okay. And that's where the content conversion system comes into play. Okay. And so how you do this is really starting to communicate your content through 3 different stages. Okay. And the first is what I refer to as the pain stage. Not everyone in the market is actively looking to switch roles, right? Not everyone in the market is always hiring. Okay. And so if we were constantly, and this is one of the things that I see a lot of folks do, is everything they do, their whole strategy and their whole game plan is to ask, hey, do you have any open roles I can work on? Hey, are you interested in a new job opportunity? And I'm sure people are more creative than that. But, the bottom line is the strategy is just to straight up go and try to interact with somebody and ask. Well, if you can actually start to think about, what are the actual pains that are causing their high turnover? What are the pains that are causing their lack of ability to attract the right talent to grow their organization or grow their department? Okay. And you start to talk about that. Okay. Because a lot of the times, the market is not aware of why they're not able to successfully recruit, hire, and retain top talent. And one of the things that I've always noticed with recruiters is sometimes they don't really value what they bring to the table. They don't really realize that they know more about the market than their actual clients do. But because the client has more money, they kind of put them on the pedestal. And the reality of it is the recruiters in most of the cases actually can run circles around an internal HR team. And run circles around most internal recruiters in their organizations. And I'm sure some of you guys feel that way. So if you want to be able to articulate that, then what you need to do is basically speak to their pain, speak to their problems, speak to their frustrations, and you'll be able to capture all the attention in the world from them by doing that. Okay. And there's always market challenges that are being introduced. Last year, the market was, fully, had to navigate around the pandemic. Now, people in the market's still navigating around the pandemic. How can you become a resource to them? How can you talk to them about having to navigate? Now, ideally, when you're engaging with a prospect that's just now kind of entering your world, they're going to consume probably smaller bits of your content more than they are going to be, consuming your larger bits of content. Okay, so that's just kind of a little note on the length and duration of things. Keep them short and sweet as you're trying to interact with somebody early on. But ultimately, if you can be the one that's identifying the pains for them and really starting to tap into that, then the next step is moving them on to the solution stage. Okay. And the solution stage is where, you've actually done a good job of educating them on their pain. And then the buyer actually goes into another stage where they actually have awareness of their problem. Okay. They actually know that they actually have a problem with their hiring system. They have a problem attracting that talent. And now what they're actively doing is they're actually looking for that solution. Okay. So they're searching for a better recruitment method, process, system, a better recruitment result. And this is really where you want to be able to get your prospects to buy into you and buy into some sort of your methodology. And I know that a lot of you guys probably use a very similar system in terms of delivery, but this is again where you need to be able to speak and share your brand. So many recruiters I talk to are like, oh, well, I do the same thing as everybody else. Yeah, but if you can market it differently than everybody else, then you immediately become different. And most people, what they don't realize is they actually don't do it the same way as everybody else. And especially if you're an independent, or if you're working as an independent or working under an organization, you should be able to sell yourself hard. And sell your methodology. So at this stage, when you're creating content, you're trying to share more about your solutions, your process, the potential outcomes that people could have by changing the way that they're hiring. And so this is where you might be able to get a little bit more of their attention and give them a little bit of more of a meaty resource at this stage, right? You might be able to give them a guide or have a webinar or a video series that actually walks them through something that can actually be of value. Okay. And that's the whole idea here, is you're trying to really position yourself as being a thought leader through your content. And a lot of this is really what's driving that brand awareness and building that powerful brand is this, right? So we're going to get a little bit longer attention span at this point. Okay. Then somebody goes into the action stage, right? And so this is when they know they have, they felt the pain, that you've identified the problem for them. You've given them the solutions that are out there. They understand what solutions are out there. Now they're ready to take action. At this point, this is when you start creating that content that's a little bit more bold and a little bit more, call to action oriented. And where we're creating that basically, hey, let's get on the phone. Let's get on the phone. That's when you should be working. That is when somebody's actually worked through those first two stages. Okay. Now, if you guys understand this, what you realize, and again, I brought it up earlier, is most recruiters, they're going at this 90% of them are going into just this action stage. Okay. Don't confuse this. I'm not telling you not to ask. If you don't ask, you don't get. So you have to stay in the action stage, but you want to warm somebody up before, because you're just going to have a much better qualified conversation. You have a better client. You're going to have a client that understands you, what you believe in, how you believe in recruiting, what you expect of them as a client. You're not just taking any role I can get because that's what I've got, right? These are two different ways to run the business. And, the challenge, like I said, with the 100% outbound approach is you're really just reactive, and you're not in a position of power and authority, because when you get this right, you'll be able to generate both client and candidate inbound leads. And when you have an inbound lead and you get on a phone for an inbound lead, you have complete control of that conversation, and you will be viewed as the authority in your marketplace. And you're going to be able to build massive brand awareness and build relationships from your content. But if you don't get this right, you'll forever have to rely on the phone and make, and how many dials you make. You'll forever be creating content, but never see a result from any of your efforts. And you'll always have to rely on your referrals and repeat business, while your competition just zooms past and takes all the market share. Okay. Now, this is from Mark. This is actually, I got these from him yesterday. These are screenshots just from his most recent article. Hey, Mark, I've enjoyed reading your LinkedIn articles. I'm currently building a compliance team for a private equity company. Perhaps we can have a call on Monday to discuss. That's an inbound lead. Hi, Mark, a friend has just sent me one of your posts and it really resonated with me. I'd be interested in talking to you about compliance jobs if you're available for a chat next week. Qualified, both of these, building a team just from posting. You guys hear the word team. Let's just say it's $500,000 roles. That's a 20K. That's a $100,000 post right there. Okay. And because Mark's done this, Mark and I have been working together so far in 2021, the marketing techniques I've learned have added well over 6 figures to our bottom line without having to make a single cold call. Okay. So this is all possible for you. Okay. The last step that we're really looking at here is how to stay top of mind. Okay. You want to become the most relevant choice in your market, and you want to really focus on dominating a small pond. And I haven't really talked about this much yet, but one of the real things, if you guys are not niched, is really driving into that niche, because when you pick a niche, it allows you to align more things into your business. It allows you to be more strategic about your client and candidate development and doing those things together. When you're building a marketing system and you're doing online marketing, if you create content that tries to hit home with everybody, I can promise you it's going to hit home to nobody. And so, the typical generalist model allows you to, when you're constantly cold calling, it allows you to tailor your message to whoever's on the other end of that phone. Okay. But when you're starting to go all in on digital, you can't tailor your message to whoever chooses to, see you and whatever eyeballs are on your content. So you really want to make sure that your brand and everything that you're doing is really for a specific audience. Because if I'm really trying to become that problem solver, I can't be the problem solver for all things recruiting, but I can be the problem solver for engineers, for example. And, one of the things I think that's a little bit short-sighted sometimes is people don't think there's enough in a niche. And I can tell you that not even a single recruiter that I know, even my best clients that are doing several million a year from this, don't even fully own their own markets, right? There's so much to go around, out there. So, if you're building a more congruent effort, it's going to create more freedom in your life. It's going to create more time for you, to spend with your family. And so I don't know how many of you guys have heard the fortune is in the follow-up, but, that's really where it's at. And what happens so much especially when everything is manual, is once I get busy, then my follow-up stops. And then I've lost the awareness and I've lost the attention of my prospect, whether it be client or candidate. And it's a pretty crazy stat that actually 48% of sales professionals don't even make a single follow-up attempt. That's basically 50% of the market is not making one single follow-up attempt from any type of outreach, whether it be client driven or candidate driven. That should be exciting to you. There's so much opportunity to follow up in a better way. The other stat I'm sure a lot of you guys are aware of and have heard is the whole statistic of, it takes 6 touch points before somebody really is actually paying attention to you. So when you think about it, 48% of the people are stopping after 1, and another probably half are stopping after 2. If you're the one that's able to stay most top of mind, then there's a lot of business to capture out there. Okay. Now, where everything has been taught and told right up to this point is to stay top of mind. You need to be on the phone all day. You need to be following up with prospects all day. Well, in some situations, that's just not possible, right? And especially when everything is all done manually, it's really tough to stay on the phone all day and follow up, right? So I'm not telling you not to do that. You should be doing that. You should be following up as a sales professional, or your sales team should be following up with your prospects on the phone. But there's more that you should be doing, okay? And that's swarming your market. I always love the word swarm because I'm a football guy. I played defense in college, and we swarm the market. We get to the football. So that's my analogy there for you guys. Is the same thing. Your prospect is your target. That's your running back, and all your social media channels, all your different platforms. Those are your defenders that are swarming the market there. If you guys can follow along with me. So basically the idea here is that you want to be able to show up everywhere to your clients. Okay. And to your candidates, of course. You want to be able to have a presence across multiple platforms because LinkedIn is a gold mine, and we know that in most markets, it's a hotbed for our clients and our candidates. But, people actually have personal lives out of business. And one of the things that always comes up to me is like, hey, yeah, Donnie, but, I work with executives of like the Fortune 100 or Fortune 500, and they're not on Facebook, for example. They're not on Facebook. And I always give this story about my buddy Dan Berrigan. He's a lucky cat, I'll tell you that much. He was like employee number 8 for Zoom, where we're hosting this training right now. And needless to say, Dan's got himself a nice new Ferrari. He has a house in Monte Sereno, which is a really expensive neighborhood here in the Bay Area. This is employee number 8 at Zoom. I see him daily, every single day on Facebook and Instagram. This is somebody, if you were looking to get into Zoom and hire and do their recruiting for account executives, for example, he would be the guy you'd want to talk to. So be careful of the stories you tell yourself about where your market hangs out. Okay. What you really need is that content conversion system. If you take this content conversion system to another platform, and you're not going to Facebook and reaching out to somebody like Dan and asking him for business, but you're reaching out and you have targeted ways using paid advertisement, then you can target your actual audience on multiple channels and have a presence and have a conversation with them. Okay. The other thing that you have the ability to do is, let's just say all of your activity starts on LinkedIn. There's this really cool thing in the marketing world, which we refer to as a pixel. Okay. And some of you guys, I'm sure, have heard of that. Some of you, it may be a little bit new, but what a pixel is a pixel is basically a little piece of code we put on a website. And it's just essentially a name tag to the user, right? And it's not an actual name tag, but it's just, if you kind of think of it that way. And then what happens is you can follow people around the internet. So hypothetically, let's say we have a conversation going on LinkedIn, and we drive some traffic to a post we did to our website. And what you can do is you set up a pixel to that page on that website, and then everybody that visits that page then gets retargeted. And the cool thing that you can do is you don't have to figure out where they're going. There's certain platforms that you can utilize that will allow you to target them wherever they go. So they can enter into your world through LinkedIn, go to your website captures them, puts a name tag on them, and then we retarget them across Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, Pinterest, news site networks, HGTV, ESPN, wherever there's display ads, people can start to see you everywhere by doing it this way. Okay. And when you're that way, when you're kind of on everything top of mind, and you're not just constantly putting out content and advertisements asking for business, but you're actually adding value to your marketplace, that's how you really become the authority of the market. That's how you stay top of mind. That's how you become the most obvious choice. in the marketplace. And there's other things like podcasting. There's so many ways that you can take your brand and your business to another level by leveraging this online marketing game. Okay. And pouring gas on the fire in this world is, getting you in front of more audience more automatically. Okay. And I'm going to drive home that word automatically. One of the ways that you can drive automatic, brand awareness is one that we talked about earlier, right? Leveraging automation, leveraging, drip email campaigns, automating LinkedIn and things like that. But the other thing really becomes using paid advertisement. Okay. Right now I've got ads on YouTube. They're targeted to folks specifically like you. I put in a budget of about $10 to $20 a day, and all it does is grow my brand every single day. And I've got calls to actions for people to come to the call with me, come to webinars and trainings with me, to go to my Facebook group. And so, but all of that is working for me without any of my effort. Okay. I have to set it up one time. And then once it's set up, then everything just happens on its own. It's so incredibly powerful when you really pour a little gas on your fire. Okay. But you really want to do this last. You want to make sure that you've got all your other systems set up. You want to make sure that your content is proven and your funnel is proven. Okay. And it's really this whole game. It's kind of like fishing, right? It's when you're going to fish, you're typically fishing for some specific fish. There's a picture of me when I was out in Florida at a mastermind. That's a snook fish out in Tampa Bay. And so when we went out, our guide basically took us like, hey, we're going to go fish for these fish. We're going to go. He drove us right to a couple of spots that he had planned out. And then we baited, our hook to catch that exact fish. Right. And then, for those of you that have fished before, that, most of the time when you throw that line in the water, you ain't catching something the first time. Right. So what do? Good fishermen just keep casting. They keep casting. They keep casting. They keep throwing it out there. And if it doesn't work, they kind of tweak and change a bait, and then they keep casting. And then eventually they land on a fish. And of course, every once in a while, they don't catch them. Right. Well, marketing is very similar. Right. I'm going to pick out my ideal fish. I'm going to pick out my ideal target market. And then I'm going to go ahead and throw a little bait on a hook for that market. I'm going to offer them something. I'm going to create a resource for them, and I create a piece of value for them. And then I'm going to go present that piece of value. I'm going to throw that out into the ocean where they hang out. I'm going to go where they hang out. I'm going to throw my value out there. And then I'm going to keep casting until their need arises. I'm going to keep casting. I'm going to keep casting. And then as they buy or buy into that guide, then I'm going to come back and I'm going to continue to keep casting with other ads and other follow-ups to make sure that I'm the most relevant top of mind choice. Okay. And eventually we catch that big fish. So if you get this part right, you'll be able to build a massive pipeline, nurture relationships, and you'll be ready to gain massive market share when the market shifts. Okay. Your clients will view you as the expert in the market and come to you for advice on how they should improve their hiring process and fill roles. And you'll be the most obvious top of mind choice when your clients and candidates' need arise. Okay. But if you don't get this, you will continue to compete for scraps with recruiters that aren't on your level. You'll be forced to stay on the hustle to get a search, and then have to turn your attention to the hustle to fill the role while your pipeline is ultimately dried up. And like I said before, it's only a matter of time before you get taken over and go out of business. Okay. But because Renee understood this, she was become viewed as the expert in her market and the go-to in her arena. It's a no-brainer. And as she's saying, is going through and implementing something like this. When the pandemic hit last year, she had clients running to her asking what they should do. She was the authority in her space, is the authority in her space, and that creates all the leverage in the world for her. Okay. And that's exactly what's possible for you. Now, I know that this may sound like a lot of work, and the reality of it is a lot of work, but we figured this out, and we figured out a way to dial this in very strategically. And we figured out how to make people, or help people implement these types of things that have no technical experience, that have never written a piece of content before, that are scared of putting themselves out into the marketplace. And for people that have had the stories of automation doesn't work, or I don't want to be a spammy this or spammy that, we've helped them build out systems that are attracting their ideal clients and candidates, that are allowing them for freedom in their life, allowing them to get away from expensive tools like LinkedIn Recruiter and leverage tools like Loxo and Sales Navigator to build a massive brand. So I promised you at the beginning of this whole thing that you'll know exactly what you need to do to scale your agency rapidly, allowing you to grow or get off that revenue roller coaster while working less hours and with better clients. So we just went over those 4 steps, which is, business development and recruiting is driven by the brand, not the desk. Learning how to build relationships at scale, creating content that converts into inbound leads, and then the fourth step of staying on the top of mind choice. Now, it looks like we have a couple minutes here, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share with you exactly what's working right now with my clients. Okay. We refer to this as the relevant recruiter method, which is we get you to stand out. We turn LinkedIn into a lead machine. We create content that converts, and we do this across multiple platforms. Okay. So what you want to do when you want to stand out is you want to get very clear on a target market. You want to build messaging for that market. And ultimately, your goal is to become the authority to that specific market. Okay. And when you get this right, ultimately what happens is you activate the reticular activating system, right? You ever go shopping for a new Range Rover or a new shirt or a new pair of shoes or a new whatever, and the next thing you know, you start to see that everywhere. Well, that's exactly what happens when you really know how to stand out in the marketplace. Is once your market becomes aware of their problem and is starting to actively look, you want to be the most obvious choice at that point in time. And so this will allow you to cut through the noise. This will allow you to get more exclusive and retained opportunities, because we're not a commodity anymore. We're standing out from the competition. Okay. And when Jen did that, she was able to get 10 calls with prospective clients in 1 week, which is a record for her. Those were all inbound, 5 contracts, ended up being a $340K package with one CEO. Jen absolutely crushed it just by changing her personal brand online. Very, very simple, just by standing out in the marketplace. Okay. The next, like we talked about, is that automated lead machine, learning how to build relationships at scale. Okay. What you want to be able to do when you're doing the automated lead machine is really take control of your industry and drive massive brand awareness. You can have hundreds of thousands of people seeing your stuff on a weekly basis, or you can have 500. Okay. You guys know who's going to win already. It's a numbers game a lot of the time. And your prospecting strategy, when you're doing it this way, allows you to spend more time on revenue driving activities rather than constantly, having to cold call and follow up and do everything manually. Okay. Automating LinkedIn, automating, your email outreach using Loxo has got to be a part of your strategy. You guys haven't done that yet. Okay. And ultimately, when these types of results, you do these little tweaks, you can send out certain emails that are getting you 4 to 5 job orders in a day. Right. This is actually my buddy Ed here. He owns Plastic Executive Recruiters, and he went through my program. He's one of the original guys to go through my program about 3 to 4 years ago. He basically he had to shut his system off a couple of weeks ago. We were just touching base. He said, I ran another campaign. I had to shut it off. I couldn't keep up with the demand. So that's a great position to be in, because he's not chasing down everything that he's picking and choosing what he wants to work on. So he's saving time. He's saving his team time. He's making a lot more money by doing it that way. Then we need to, do that content conversion system. So we're building relevant relationships that deepen trust, connection, and rapport with your market through a powerful content strategy. Okay. And then this is where we're taking that prospect again from not knowing where their pain is and taking them all the way through, making them aware of their pain, their problem, showing them the solution, and ultimately getting them to take an action and create an inbound lead for you, like we showed you with Mark. And when you do that, like I said before, being able to have inbound leads and being able to drive traffic and get somebody on your calendar rather than you trying to pound down the door to get on their calendar, it's a game changer, guys. If you haven't experienced it yet, I can't tell you how much it is just a complete game changer in the process. You save so much time, but more importantly, it's like, I don't know how many of you guys, and I know this is a common frustration, where like you're ghosted basically from the hiring decision maker. You get the job order, they tell you to come in, you go to work, you submit your candidate, you don't hear back from them. This strategy takes care of that, because again, the positioning, you're not just Joe, the recruiter. You're like, oh, Joe, shoot, that's the recruiter we need to work with. Right. So, this is my buddy, Tom. I can't tell you all the things that Tom's been able to achieve through this program, but I'll tell you, go take a look at Tom's LinkedIn presence. The guy is absolutely throttling it. Okay. I mean, just owning his industry, and he's seen a return on investment that he didn't even think was possible. I'm not really allowed to share the numbers with you, but I will tell you that Tom, in multiple occasions, has received job orders in the hundreds from the execution of the relevant recruiter method. Okay. Reese Keck, all of his business is inbound, and he's becoming the recognized authority in his market. Okay. Multi-platform scaling is the last thing. Okay. This is where we stay top of mind and drive traffic in an easy, powerful way across multiple platforms. Okay. The key to getting consistent engagements is having an effective promotional strategy. When it comes to promotion, you want to be able to do this easily. You don't want to make this a bunch of your time. And so if you know how to show up and track people across multiple platforms, your brand awareness goes to the roof, and they have no choice but to give you an opportunity once their need arises. And when you start incorporating some of this stuff with some of your traditional outreach methods, it's gas on the fire. Like I said, it is a powerful, powerful thing. And this is another way that you need to think about of actual automation. When you're putting money behind things, money's now doing work. And some people are afraid to spend, but here's the thing. I spend about $4,000 to $5,000 a month on advertisement. And people might be shocked by that. But where I live in the state of California, I couldn't hire a salesperson for $48,000 in the state of California. It's just not possible. It's not going to work. Right. So I don't know if I can hire a quality salesperson anywhere in the world for $48,000. So when you look at your spending that way, and you're confident that you're going to get a return, shoot, I'll pay $48,000. And my best salesperson is my paid lead generation. Okay. And this is kind of what happens when you understand that, right? John Randolph here, he's got a CPA recruiting firm down in Dallas. 3 new clients, 5 new searches, and candidate engagement is up 50 to 60% right after he went through the program. Sally Holland, marketing and sales recruiter, saving a ton of time. Okay. Katie Kelly, she's working accounting and finance recruiter. She's able to reach her clients and candidates at a broader scale. Okay. Summer Chansey, she is dominating her industry, and she was able to double her revenue and adding her first employee. Okay. This is all possible and powerful because of the relevant recruiter method. Okay. And the last thing I will say before we get into the Q&A is, if you guys want to talk about this specifically and how this can apply to your business specifically, I've opened up my calendar. I'm going to drop the link in the chat below. If you guys want to grab a time with me, it's 100% free. I don't know if I actually have a chat here. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. So maybe I'll drop it in the Q&A, or reach out to me at donnie@donniegupton.com. But love to get on the phone with you guys and talk about this method, see how it can help your business out specifically. But like Dan said early on, I'd love to open this up for a Q&A now. I appreciate you guys taking the time to be here with me today.
Donnie, fantastic presentation. Thank you again. We have made a recording of this, so we've gotten a lot of questions from people during the presentation just saying, can you send me the recording of this? So yes, we're going to send a follow-up email to all of you, and we'll include a link to the video so you guys can watch it over and over again. And as Donnie mentioned, there is a Q&A box on your webinar control panel. It looks like we have a couple questions that have come in that are coming in slowly, but feel free to type a question or two into Donnie. And we've got, looks like 12 minutes until top of the hour when we have to cut the webinar off. But Donnie, if you want to take some questions, are you able to open up the Q&A box and see those?
Yeah, I can see them right now. They're just kind of general comments. Can you talk about how to set up the pixel? Yeah. All right, Jared. So this is actually probably the most complicated question you could ask, but so I'll be honest, what I would do if I were you, Jared, if you're, depending on how savvy you are technically, I think the easiest thing to do is go to like a platform like Fiverr or like Upwork, like a freelancer platform, and just hire somebody to go do it. And so, for example, with Facebook, you would have to set up a Facebook business account. Though Facebook's pixel is actually more complex now than it's ever been. And so again, if you're not doing these things on a regular basis, I would just recommend outsourcing it to a contractor. And honestly, it's if you do it that way, you could probably get a contractor to do it for you for like 20 to 50 bucks on that platform. And it'd be well worth it just to save your sanity. But essentially, on the high level tech, you need to be able to log into the back end of your website. And then you're just basically installing code into your website. And so each little platform, for example, Google has its own pixel, Facebook has its own pixel, LinkedIn has its own stuff. All of them are going to have their own things. And, it just depends on where you're starting. But you're going to make sure you add, get pixels on there. And it's great to do it sooner than later, even if you don't have a plan, because it actually is just continuing to capture the data. So hopefully that helps. But like I said, I would just outsource that. That's going to be way easier for you. Yeah, good question, Paul. So the system is really geared towards client development, but every single one of my clients comes back and talks about how well it works on the candidate side. So definitely the LinkedIn automation part of it works like a home run. As you can see from the post from Mark, he's having candidates reach out to them. Candidate outreach is, I'm not a bullshitter here, excuse my language, but it's a flip of the coin. But I think one of the things that surprised a lot of people when they went all in on trying to do some content that attract candidates is they're actually attracting way more qualified candidates than they think. And they're able to hit that passive market. So yeah, honestly, Paul, it really supports on both sides of the coin there. Let me know if you have any follow-up questions about that. Yeah, so I don't know, this was from an anonymous attendee. Question is, all these tactics make complete sense for individual solo recruiter. What advice do you have for employers with employees hesitant to put themselves out there? Good question. So I think, a couple of things, leadership comes from the top, right? So if you're not putting yourself out there yet, then it's going to be hard to motivate them to put themselves out there. And then it's just like anything else, you have to get them to buy into the skill. Most people are going to be naturally hesitant to that. Even a lot of the business owners that I work with are naturally hesitant to that. And it's usually just because of imposter syndrome, right? Who's going to listen to me anyways? Who's going to think about this and blah, 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 blah. So there's not really a shortcut to that necessarily. But I think what you'd want to do is, again, if you're doing it from the top, and you are the one that's starting to put yourself out there, then you just kind of have them start kind of following your lead. One of the things I've found to be the easiest way to put yourself out there, or to motivate a team to put themselves out there, is really just kind of have them focus on telling stories. Okay. And the reason I say that is because it kind of goes back into that imposter syndrome or devaluing. You guys heard me say it a couple of times throughout the whole thing, is like a lot of times recruiters don't really value what they bring to the table. And so, but they forget about like all the value that they drop all day long, right? So let's just say you have, your independent, recruiters on your team, and they're on the phone. Well, if a candidate asks a question about, hey, how should I present my LinkedIn profile, through my new job search? And then the recruiter goes and drops some really good advice. Well, what they should do at that point is really just stop, and go turn that into a story. Hey, I just got off the phone with an engineering professional who's, actively looking for, a new role. And, the question of what he needs to do to prep his LinkedIn profile came up. And so what I told him was, you need to do these 3 things: bullet point, bullet point, bullet point. Hope that helps somebody. Right. So if you really just kind of teach them, it's a different frame. And so there's not, there's not a one size fits all here, but that's what we've been able to do. I've helped several organizations have their teams do it. And obviously, as some people are going to be more receptive to that or not. But I think one of the things that you would want to consider is, it's a different hire now. Right. So it's going to be tough to do anything from your existing team. And I'm certainly not suggesting that you let anybody go for that reason. But I think as you look at bringing on new people, it's like a new attribute that you should look at. Like, hey, are you willing to do some social media and put yourself out there? The other things, when you're talking about other ways of doing it, all of your team should really have their own, strategy on LinkedIn to grow their network, to start conversations, and leverage a little bit of automation in a thoughtful way. And that's an easy way to kind of get them, maybe not put themselves out there, but at least you're leveraging, them and their network and their brand a little bit more. But let me know if you have any follow-up questions to that, if that's helpful at all. Good question. So very intriguing system. How do you utilize Loxo? I did see one screenshot. So a lot of the ways that, I recommend my clients to use Loxo, first and foremost, I don't sit in Loxo all day long personally myself. But the CRM and the ATS is obviously great. I think one of the things that's really become great about Loxo is like I said, their data. And so one of the ways that we really use it is taking the data of the people that they can find, and then putting people, whether they're clients and candidates, mostly on the candidate side, through a drip campaign, right? And we'll sometimes even get external data, upload it, and put those people through, a specific drip campaign. I think that their text messaging is a game changer. And if you're not fully all in on their text messaging part, people respond to text messages a lot. People have their phone in their hand pretty much all day now. That's just kind of the new behavior. We were actually talking about this on my mastermind yesterday. Somebody's like, well, I was actually surprised at how receptive people are to these texts. I was really nervous that people were going to be, turned off by it, so to speak. And what they found was that the candidates are fully open to it. And, the text messaging is huge. But I think the other thing that's commonly overlooked, and I think that is why I think Loxo is such a powerful all-in-one tool, is the ability to send single sends, which, just to kind of clarify that's more like your newsletter style, right? Where I'm going to take a specific list or audience within Loxo, and then I'm going to add value. And I think that because you can send drip campaigns, because you can send text messages, because you can send single sends, and you have the data, CRM, ATS, from a marketing standpoint, I mean, where I sit, it's a no-brainer, right? So that's really how we recommend to utilize Loxo, is just a way to do the drip campaigns and then nurture. Part of that whole last thing of staying top of mind, one of the big parts, and I probably didn't drive it home well enough in the presentation, is doing the email, right? And you want to be able to email your audience and not always be like, hey, what kind of orders do you have? Or, hey, here's the open positions we have, but also incorporating things like, hey, John, here's 4 tips, for, speeding up your hiring process. Here's the top 5 interviewing questions you need to be asking all your engineers. And then vice versa, you do the same thing to a candidate list. Like, hey, here's how you prepare for the question, what makes you different from the next candidate out there? And really just start to be that value thought leader. And, Loxo has the ability to do all that. So it's kind of a single place for all your data. And that's what I like about it. So the single send, like I said, that's just like sending out a newsletter. I'm going to send one email campaign at a blast there. That might be a better question for Dan. I'm pretty sure that Loxo and Sales Navigator link together. I know that Loxo doesn't offer any type of LinkedIn automation. I know that that's not it, but Dan, do they connect? Is there a connection at some point?
There's no integration as such, but you can use our
Okay.
Chrome extension to pull people in from LinkedIn.
Perfect. Yep. That's excellent. Really good questions. And then, I only really recommend one LinkedIn solution, and that's Ulink. Ulink is a great tool. And in fact, we've got all the workarounds with Ulink, where we're not even impacted by the 100 a week invite limit. So we've got complete workarounds using that tool. It's really, really a fantastic tool. It allows you to communicate, with your existing network, but also allows you to communicate with a new network, so. LinkedIn Sales Navigator different than LinkedIn Premium. I don't know the exact, bullet point for bullet point, but I'll just tell you, LinkedIn Sales Nav just has incredible search capabilities. I'm not going to compare it necessarily to a recruiter, but I've had a lot of my clients say that it's just as good in their ability to search out. I don't think Premium gives you that. More importantly, though, is most of these automation softwares are built to tie into Sales Navigator. They're not built to tie into any of the other tools. So that's really the main part of the recommendation. But I think one of the other things that Sales Navigator has done well is your ability to create targeted lists in there now, where you can actually just build out more smaller targeted campaigns of prospects and things like that. And we've actually found ways to automate that. So you don't have to automate, when people think automation, they just think thousands and thousands and spam. And you can put together a list of 13 prospects and send them all a message, just like you would do out of Loxo. So it's very, very powerful when done right. One of the things, just like I say with, the content strategy, like if you're connecting with somebody on LinkedIn and your goal is to try to get them on the phone right away and sell them, it's going to be on deaf ears. It's going to be on crickets. I see it every day. That's what the market's irritated by. But if you connect with somebody on LinkedIn and you start to, try to have a personal conversation with them or try to start to add a little value to their life, you'd be amazed at what can happen there. So, it's Ulink, ULINC. You won't find anything about it on the web. I'm one of the only sellers of it. It's a very underground tool. It stays off the radar, and that's why we recommend it. But it's got human-like behavior. It's very powerful. So, good questions. That's the last one in. Anybody else have any last questions? You guys can see this link here. It's kind of a tough one to follow. If you are interested in speaking with me and talking more about that methodology, you could also just go to donniegupton.com/calendar. I thought I'd be able to drop this into a chat link here, but it doesn't look like I have that ability. So if you want to go to donniegupton.com/calendar, you can just grab a time there if you are interested in speaking with me.